Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be another upgrades video. In today's upgrades video, we are once again looking at my retro style 10.5 inch rifle. As always, you can check out those links down in the description below if you would like to support everything that I do here on the Firearm Freedom YouTube channel. If you want to help defeat those stupid YouTube algorithms, then hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and comment down below. Let me know if you enjoyed the video. All of that stuff greatly helps me out, and I seriously do appreciate it. Guys, this is definitely not the first time you have seen this 10.5 inch AR here on the channel. I've actually done a few other reviews in the past, whether it was in a pistol format or the rifle format that it's in now, and I always had it in kind of the OG retro commando looking gun, and when it comes down to it, it has just been a super affordable setup. There's nothing crazy going on here, nothing clone correct. We're looking at a PSA 10.5 inch upper with the fixed front sight and a freaking Anderson lower. I will say I have never had a single malfunction of any type with this upper, no matter what lower it was on and no matter what bolt carrier group I had in there or anything like that. It's always ran 100% reliably. In this case, more recently, this was kind of like roaming in the collection with an unknown purpose. I was always like scavenging parts off of it and switching parts around. I had like a Magpul MOE handguard on there for a bit, different stock, different pistol grip. Everything was swapping around, and I finally figured, you know what? I'm going to figure out exactly what upgrades that I want to have on this gun, and it is staying like that. I'm not touching it, and I know everyone's probably had something like that in the collection, but in this case, I swear to God, I'm going to leave it how it is because the quad rail is life nowadays. I absolutely love quad rails. So as you can see, I have left it in the carry handle configuration. Of course, it is not as cool as a non-detachable carry handle, but the detachables are still pretty freaking cool and retro and also very practical. You have probably the strongest sighting system that you're ever going to have on a rifle. If these sights break, the chances are is that your rifle is probably broken as well. So I left the detachable carry handle on here, and of course, it just has the fixed front sight in the front, and the bolt carrier group that I'm running is just a standard PSA nitrided bolt carrier group. This thing runs no problem, runs suppressed, unsuppressed without issues. I threw in a BCM, the newer extended charging handle. I believe this is the large latch. You guys know I am somewhat of a fan of the newer BCM charging handles, but then at the same time, not really, because the older ones were much, much better. But these new ones really aren't terrible for the money. I stuck with the Magpul K2 grip. This thing works just fine. It gets the job done, and it has a little bit more of a vertical grip angle when you're looking at a shorter rifle setup like this with a 10.5 inch barrel and something that you're going to be kind of hunched up on a little bit more. That more vertical grip angle does help out, and I do like the texture that this grip has. It has really nice aggression to it for just standard out of box, which is really cool. I have the B5 SOPMOD stock on here. This is one of my favorite stocks just for the overall look, but then also the comfort when bringing it up against the shoulder. This thing does a very good job in the angle that the butt pad is placed in. Now, the only thing that I have run into with it is on certain clothing, it does tend to kind of grab the clothing a little bit. Like if you're in a baggy hoodie or something like that, it tends to stick a little bit more than like a BCM stock. That's the only gripe I have about it. But other than that, I think it looks absolutely incredible on this 10.5 setup, so it is definitely staying. I have a standard carbine buffer and spring that I'm going to be switching out to probably an H2. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. Running a standard GI Colt 20 round magazine. Super cool magazine here. It was gifted to me by a buddy of mine, so it has a little bit of a special place for me, but very cool mag, and it sits very nicely in this 10.5 setup. I have a standard Midwest Industries drop-in quad rail. This is a great quad rail. It does have a QD point in the rear and the front of the quad rail. honestly, for the price that these come in at, about like 120 bucks retail, these are phenomenal. Super well-made rails, drop right in, no problems there, and it gives you the exact same look of a CAC rail or anything like that, but you're not paying 400 bucks for it. And then the only thing that's different is you're going to notice the Midwest Industries logo right there, which I'm really not caring too much about, considering nothing else on this gun is clone correct. Now, I also am just running some electrical tape here for the cord mitigation system on a quad rail. This is actually my favorite way to mitigate the cord. Works out perfectly, holds the cords no problems. I don't have any issues with heat or anything like that. It freaking works out great. And I have some extra electrical tape if I need it for any other use. I could just take a little bit off and cut it, no problems there. I'm running a Streamlight ProTac Rail Mount 2 Lite. If you guys remember my Colt upper build that I did a while back, there's a video of it on the channel, and this is exactly how I have that set up, so I tried to mirror it here. This Streamlight ProTac works great. I've never had an issue with these ProTac lights. I'm running it with a pressure pad attached to the top, one zip tie holding the pressure pad on, and then these standard little rubber things to go on the rail, and that holds it just fine. There's absolutely no issues there. It's super rigid, and I have the standard rail mount attachment here on the side of the quad rail. Running a standard Troy vertical grip on here. It's the aluminum vertical grip. I have this on something else in the collection, so I just wanted to kind of mirror it on this quad rail. The Troy vert grip can be shortened. It has more of like kind of that mil spec vert grip feel, and with the aluminum, the knurling there feels really good in the hand. And typically with how I shoot this gun, it just works very, very well. That overall quad rail, the vert grip, everything like that works just fine. I am running a bad lever on this lower. I know a lot of people hate the bad lever. I've never had an issue with it per se, but I do like testing everything out here on the channel. So if a lot of people are running this, I want to run it and give it a shot. So I've been doing some training with this, and it's all right. It's definitely not something I'm going to be throwing on every gun, but in this case, on the one gun that I'm running it on, getting a little bit of extra training on a different style. Obviously, when it comes to training with the bad levers, you just got to watch out. Don't want to be NDing and other things like that, getting your trigger finger close to the trigger when you're not trying to fire the gun. So always be aware of that. I was running originally a Silencer Co. ASR flash hider, which I absolutely loved on this 10.5 upper. It just made the look super cool. It had more of an old school look to it. But in this case, I actually got a different suppressor to run specifically as a dedicated can for this 10.5 upper, and that's the AAC M4-2000. I'm going to be doing a later review on this. Honestly, I got it for a steal from a buddy. It was unfired. It's like 200 bucks. So for this can, you can't beat that. And that's definitely something that I'm not going to turn down. When it comes to the attachment point here, the 51 tooth mount is probably the worst mount as far as longevity nowadays. And of course, AAC is no longer the company that it was. It's currently restarting, but that was a massive failure point with these cans. Now, it is very important that when you're putting the suppressor on the gun and you're threading it down, you're essentially just going to want to hold the latch down and turn it with the gun until it stops, and you're going to want to make sure that it's tight. If you do that, the teeth in the latch are going to stay good overall, but this is definitely not a can I would spend 800 bucks on. Back in the time that these cans were coming out, they were phenomenal. They were some of the best suppressors on the market for the technology of the day. Now, with all the other options that are out there, obviously we know that there are some better ones, but at the moment, this gives a super cool look to the overall gun, and I would have rather had one of their flash hiders on here, but these mounts are also a huge fail point because they're nearly impossible to find these days, and they are very expensive. In this case, I was able to get their flash hider slash brake from a buddy for like 50 bucks, so I'm definitely not going to turn that down, and it was well used, so this thing has seen better days, but it still works just fine. The one thing that I will say when it comes to shooting the gun unsuppressed now at this point, I had absolutely no idea how much flame this AAC brake slash flash hider has. It is ridiculous. I did one final mag dump at the day and it just lit up the screen with flash, and I was kind of like, damn, I am never going to want to shoot this thing without the can on it, which kind of sucks. The concussion was ridiculous, and also it was during the morning. It was very light out, and you could still see the flame, so I can't even imagine how bad this flame is at night. So the can is definitely good that it's on more of a dedicated setup where the can is pretty much going to stay on here for the life of the rifle and the suppressor. Now, I did notice that from the difference of shooting the M4-2000 on this upper from the Omega was much less gassy on this setup. There was a lot less back pressure, whereas this, being a dedicated 5.56 suppressor, the M4-2000 had much more back pressure. It was noticeably different on recoil, and the brass was ejecting out almost the 12 o'clock to like 12:31 position, signifying that the gun was very overgassed. Now, I'm not seeing any sort of adverse wear or anything like that, but that will be something that I'm going to address and throw an H2 or an H3 buffer in there and just kind of play around with the weight to just kind of tune it a little bit better for this 5.56 suppressor. Other than that, it was actually a very quiet setup to run suppressed. Absolutely loved it. There was no problems at all there, and being the short overall package, having the M4-2000 on the end just completes the look with that more retro looking engraving there on the can, which I love. And I have kept the same trigger in this lower. It's just actually an ALG trigger in there. No problems at all. This trigger is phenomenal for a cheap mil-spec trigger that's just nickel coated, so it's very, very smooth. You can get some very fast, quick shots. That is going to wrap up this upgrades video on the 10.5 here in the collection. Absolutely love this setup, and I'm finally happy that it is going to stay in this configuration without messing with it anymore. If you guys have any other questions about this rifle or anything else on the channel, please throw them down below in the comment section, and you guys know I absolutely will get back to you. While you're down there, check out the description for all those links, and stay tuned for more great videos to come soon.